Okay, welcome back to our DISC workshop. We'll start here today with the DISC manifesto. Remember, these are powerful words and phrases, and they're designed to capture your attention and get you focused on this session. So I know you've both been busy with your other tasks and key accountabilities. Take a look at the screen and see what word or phrase captures your attention today. It may be the same as last week. It may be different. What captures your attention? Okay, Jessica, when you're ready.
Read others like a book.
Oh, yes. Remind me, why is that important to you?
Well, I love reading, but I've taught myself not to judge a book by its cover. So I feel like sometimes you need to look further into it and actually notice what's going on and not just say, okay, that's what it's going to be.
Okay. When have you read somebody like the cover of a book and got it right? Give me an example.
Um, that's a hard question. I've gotten it right. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now.
My wife is currently studying a master's in psychology, and this is the topic they're actually learning about this semester, first impressions. And we say that a first impression takes about 4 seconds. And normally it's just by sensory awareness. You're just looking at the person through your eyes before you hear or before they do anything. It then takes 30 seconds for our cognitive bias to take place. And what happens over the next 30 seconds, your brain just reconfirms what you saw in the first 4 seconds. So we just had this conversation on Sunday with our daughter and our son, and we were walking into Taipei 101, which is one of the world's tallest buildings and the tallest one here in Taiwan. This man walked past us really fast, and he had shorts on that were so short that his underpants hang out the bottom. And I've never seen a woman wear pants so short, but they were on a man. And my daughter said, Dad, look at his shorts. Look at his shorts. You can see his underpants. And I said, no. And she was staring at him and she said, oh, that's weird. My wife looked at his shorts and she's like, oh my gosh, they're so short. And then you know what he did? He opened the door for all of us and stood there and waited till the whole family walked through. And so the first impression was made by the shorts and the underpants hanging out. And then all of the family were in shock because they realized how quick you make a first impression. And then in your mind, you've got to try to unwind it when they shocked you with a contrasting behavior. So that's a 4-second bias. Eski, what about you? What grabs your attention and what's an example?
I can save you 20 years of self-discovery.
Yes. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think that as people, we're always evolving and changing, and it's like I'm still learning about myself as much as I sometimes don't want to, or sometimes I focus on other things. So I think that if there's a way to save this self-discovery, if you can save me 20 years, we'd love that. I feel like I'm still learning every day.
So if we take these two and combine them, Jessica, we can look at people and look at their behaviors. And if we understand their behaviors just by looking at them, we can quickly put them in a potential category of DISC. And DISC is a universal model. It's going to work the same in Australia as it does in Ghana, in Entebbe, North Africa, South Africa, America, and Europe. And if we can just have that awareness, we can quickly read them like a book without passing judgment on the individual. We can just say, I observed this behavior. They were aggressive when it came to getting results. They were influential and enthusiastic in front of people. They move at a slower pace. So when you look at a D-style person, they'll walk really fast. Everything they do is high speed. A low D does everything at a slower pace. So even if you're just observing pace, you can start to categorize, okay, more D because they move fast pace, more S because they're moving at a very slow pace. If somebody's really looking into the details, it appears that they're more like a high C. And then what you can do, you can adapt, adjust, and respond to your behaviors. And if you get it right, excellent. If you get it wrong, you can course correct. And what you're saying, Eski, is we've got to learn to read people really fast because we can't sit with everybody in the team for 20 years and try to figure out who they are. We'll be old and grey by that stage.
They'll be gone.
They'll be gone.
Time.
They'll be gone.
No, no, they'll be gone. Like, you know what I mean? You spend time and effort and then it's over. Or like, you know what I mean? It's just, you've wasted time, investment, all of that. Just killer.
And I saw it in a business last week. The business did the entire interview process. Then they did the higher sense report. They looked into the higher sense report and didn't like what they saw because it didn't match their first impression. On day one, they fired the individual because they were exactly what they saw in the higher sense report and didn't like. So when we talk about building a team, it takes on average 100 hours to hire one person. Today, we have to receive at least 250 applications. 15 will be okay. 3 will be really good. And then we've only got a 50% chance of getting one of those candidates. If we get it right, business grows. If we get it wrong, we go back to the starting line, and now it takes us another 100 hours to go through the process. But that 100 hours at the moment with a lot of businesses, some of these roles aren't filled for 3 or 6 months. So this is where we've got to be able to read people like a book really quickly. Okay, I can start to see this pattern. So that's important because as soon as they come into the team, we go straight into that honeymoon period. We then start to storm, just like this business I mentioned. They were storming on day one. The person was let go after the first hour. It was just a poor match. Once we get through that, we get into the norming phase, and then only about 20% of businesses get into the performing phase. And that's our ultimate goal. Get the right person the first time, go through forming, storming, and norming, and then have your team performing. So what we're going to do today, we're going to have a look at the higher sense process to build a winning team. We're going to explore behavioral tendencies, and then we're going to have your team built by the end. Sound good? Okay. These are the 6 most important steps when building a winning team. We start in the preparation phase. We move to the define stage. We do our screening. Then we do our selection. So you'll see here that in selection, we're also looking at culture fit. Is this person going to fit the culture? Because there's a certain culture here at C+M that wasn't at your last place of work. Is that fair to say, Eski? For you, Jessica, it's different as well. And sometimes people fit the culture and they don't. They could be the nicest person, but maybe they just don't get the jokes. So we want to consider culture fit. Even as you build your team, you've got to decide what's the best culture, what's your team, how do you fit, how do other fit? Once we select for culture fit, we then do the onboarding process. Now, this has already been done in your teams, but what we miss a lot of times is we don't sit down and confirm the talent patterns. We don't get confirmation of, well, who's Jessica and who's Daniel and how do we work together? Who's Eski? Who's Jessica and how do they work together? We'll start to do that today. In the onboarding phase, we also look at how does this particular talent fit the leader? And that's what you were doing last time. You were looking at your disc styles and which leader would you work with the best? And it's a science, isn't it? It's a lot of thought. And then we also have talent.
Not the word I was thinking of, Daniel.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a brain tease.
Yes.
And then we have talent and team fit. And that's about, you might have heard this, the saying before, you got to get the right people on the bus.
Mhm.
But then you've got to get them in the right seat, which includes the team. Where will this person function the best? So those steps there highlighted in blue, this is really where we're focusing our 2 sessions. Jessica, any insights, anything you want to share so far?
I guess when you spoke about talent and team fit, I think it just reminded me of when Kirby first came to me with this position. Like, she really kind of spoke about how she thought that I could excel in this position, whereas in my old position I was kind of just like at a standstill. So there's more room for progress and development in one position than there was in
Do you think like being in the position so far, do you think like you can see that?
yeah,
Or you're
100%.
like
I can
lower
already
than- yeah.
What's
I see
interesting,
it. Because you're not the lower, right? You know what I mean? Yes. She's amazing.
what's interesting as well, Jessica, is you could have the right talent in the wrong team and they won't perform. And if you've ever watched any type of team sports, you can see that sometimes all they have to do is go to another team or another division and they come to life.
Yeah.
But as we said before, it takes 20 years to figure that out. We don't have that time. We've got to get it done really quick. Eski, any insights for you so far? Any reflections?
I think the culture fit is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Just reflecting on, this is a small business. We're a small team essentially compared to other businesses, but we perform in volumes of what some other big businesses in the area do. So if you don't have the right culture, or if you don't fit the culture here, or understand the culture, or we've got a lot of different personalities. So if you don't fit that, then that can really affect the workplace, the performance, etc. So I think that one was a big one.
There's one question that we ask when we do the debriefing. And the question is, would you have this person home for Christmas dinner? And that's about culture. And if you wouldn't have that person home for Christmas dinner with you and your loved ones, they just simply don't fit the culture. That's nothing personal. It's just about culture. And you have to see these people. We say that the average person spends 2,000 hours a year at work.
Mhm.
The average person spends less than 60 seconds in an intimate conversation with their children per day. So imagine that you got 2,000 hours face to face, yet your own children, it's going to be 60 seconds of uninterrupted conversations. So culture fit really trumps almost everything else. And if they're not a culture fit, then we stop there and we don't go any further. So we also looked at the team disc wheel last week. We had a look at where they sit. And a lot of people are over here in this supportive, very persuasive, and assertive and persuasive part of the wheel. Now, what we're going to do this week is we're going to get really down into the details and we're going to have a look at what are the behaviors of each of these individuals. So we're going to have a look at a scale of intensity from high to low. Now, reading somebody like a book, Jessica, high intensity scores will be clearly obvious. It'll stand out like dogs. What do we say? Dogs' balls. You're going to see it in most situations. If it's low intensity, then there's going to be an absence of the behavior in most situations. So we're going to look at high and low intensities. So this is what the team behaviors look like. starting on the left-hand side, we have careful decision-making. We then have reasoning. We have change resistance, prioritizing, self-reliance, work process alignment, accuracy, building rapport, personal drive, providing instructions, customer team interaction, and expressing openness. So,
And they're all out of 100.
what was that? Sorry, Eski?
They're all out of 100, like the numbers is 0 to
Yes.
100.
Yes. 0 to 100, low intensity to high intensity. So when you look at this, Jessica, what's just one thing that quickly grabs your attention? Where do your eyes go?
To the high intensity.
High intensity. Okay. Eski, what's your first impression, your gut response when you see these behavioral tendencies?
Like, we're all over the shop. Like, you know, like when you say to me it's out of 100, and then just looking at the team average and median even, it's just like down here with the careful decision making and reasoning we're low, but then you got the expressing openness and the team interaction is on the higher end, which I wouldn't have expected, if you know what I mean. I would have thought our reasoning would have been on the higher end because we're working on, yeah, it's just a bit all over the shop.
Okay, beautiful. Now we're going to take those first impressions and we're going to get right down into the details. So the first thing that I want you to consider, what are the top 3 scores? What are the behaviors that this team most exhibits? So take a look there and note down what the top 3 scores are and what this team most exhibits.
Building. Can we just say it out loud or just write it out?
Yeah, if you write it down, and we'll start to build the case as we go.
Excuse me.
So you've got the team averages down the bottom as well. That'll make it nice and simple. Okay, what have you got there? What are the top 3?
Building rapport.
Mm-hmm.
Do we take one?
Yeah, team interaction.
And
Mhm.
expressing openness.
Okay, building rapport, team interaction, and expressing openness. Okay. When you reflect on your team, does that align with how you see them?
Yeah, building rapport definitely.
Mhm.
Team interaction. Yeah. I guess I've never really analyzed or thought about it in that sense, you know?
It's very
I
different.
think it's just more interesting to me how much of us are one way. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like looking at the numbers, you're seeing only one person not being in the middle. One or 2 people in each of those are not in the top end.
Mm.
And by top end, I mean plus 60 plus. So it's like there's just outliers within the majority. Does that make sense?
It does. So I'm just going to take you back to this screen for a moment. So this is the big picture. And then as we chunk down into the details, that's what the details look like. And it starts to explain these behavioral tendencies, which are also the talents. Okay, so we've got building rapport, team interaction, expressing openness. Now, what are the bottom 3 scores? the behaviors that the team exhibits least. Okay, what do you got there, Jessica?
Reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Careful decision making.
Uh-huh.
Self-reliance.
Okay. What's your interpretation, Jessica? What stands out to you as you reflect on your team?
I guess it makes sense that the lowest or the complete opposite of the higher end. Because obviously self-reliance, decision-making and reasoning go against, working as a team sometimes. So it makes sense that it's completely opposite on the lower end and the higher end.
Mm.
Like to me, that just says we work better as a team than we do as individuals.
I think the individual scores in these categories is what's interesting. Looking at, like say, the careful decision making one, we're all pretty low, but just the like Frank being that low surprises me.
Yeah.
Or like being that different from the rest of us. But perhaps that's why when he's in his adaptive state, he's on the other end as well.
Yeah.
And then the self-reliance, because Jessica and John would be two people in the team that are always there to help and always there to, so looking at the low collaborative, if you say, to me, in my mind, I would think they were opposite. They're working with everyone.
Got it.
Does that make
It does. It does.
sense?
So you've got your really low intensity and then you have your high intensities. And so Frank really stands out there because it's 18. So that absence should really stand out for Frank.
So does that mean he's high? He's not impulsive. He's low in impulsiveness.
Low intensity. So there's going to be an absence of that behavior.
Okay. Gee, we gotta have them side by side. I forgot all the colors.
See, I feel like Frank is a very he makes careful decisions. That's why that yellow is kind of strange. I feel he's very calculated.
So would this be? But then is it in their adaptive state or in their natural?
This is all their natural.
Natural, because Claudio's alongside everybody essentially.
Yep, in his natural state.
But it's different things that make us add up to be
Correct.
Yeah.
So when we have a look at the disc wheel, we'll just go back here. You can see here on the outer edge of the wheel, it's going to be more intense. When it's towards the middle of the wheel, it's going to be less intense. Okay, good. Now let's start to have a look at what are the strengths and weaknesses. So when you look at it again this time, think about what are the strengths on the team and how does that help or hurt performance? And then have a look at the weaknesses and think through how that helps or hurts the performance of the team. So we'll start with the strengths. What do you see there as a strength and how does that help or hurt the team?
Well, the building rapport and customer and team interaction and expressing openness. Obviously, that's I think a strength to the team when we're such a customer and people focused industry, as well as working as a team together, having those similarities. But we're not too dependent. Like if you're just looking at it when you say again with the average, like we're still let's say 70% or the median. Even the median drops us a bit when we add everyone's, but it's like we're not too much, but it's still on the higher end. I forget what the color was for the peach.
Right there in the middle,
Moderate, was it?
moderate. Yep.
So it's when you've got such a diverse team, I guess it's good, although we're not really diverse, but
Now, if we had a look there at expressing openness, with those scores at 70, is there anything here that could hurt the team? With the expressing openness being more social and higher. And the thinking behind it is sometimes when we have a strength and it's overused, it can turn into a weakness. So an example is
I can't work with Will for this reason. We'll get a score on that. I think we're both very, and they just,
But then you look at Phil and Will, and they're so opposite in that.
yeah, that's my thing. Like he's very, and that's why I put up my hand and said I definitely just genuinely can't, because it's like he's almost too open.
Mm.
That can be hard, and like there's no structure with human sense. Whatever he thinks, he feels, which is good in some cases, but it's hard for me because in the workplace, I can't. I need that consistency. I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
Excellent insights. And as you look at it through this matrix, you can better decide who you work with the best. Because there's always going to be what we say is there's 4 types of conflicts. The first type of conflict is a me conflict. So what that means, it's a behavior that I have that makes me feel uncomfortable. So for example, I'm a high D, and sometimes I feel that aggressive nature. Everything's a competition. I want to win. And it makes me feel uneasy, and I've got to tame it down. So that's a me conflict. The second type of conflict is a me-you conflict. And that's what you're expressing here, Eski. This extreme score of 80 and the expressing openness, this makes me feel uncomfortable. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how these styles work together. If you're lower and they're higher and it becomes an extreme, sometimes it's just too much. So we say it's a me-you conflict. The third thing we have is what's called a me-role conflict. So imagine for a moment, we'll just say a person has expressing openness and the score's 80. What can happen is in their role, they might divulge way too much information. When the role requires you to potentially withhold information. And that can be a me-role conflict. So imagine a doctor who shouldn't disclose information, but they have a tendency to express information. That would be a conflict. We then have a me-environment conflict. And that's where a particular behavior can just not be suited to the environment. So, for example, maybe expressing too much openness in the environment of a listing could turn away the customer. We don't need to know about what the opposition did on the weekend. We don't need to know who's doing drugs and alcohol and having an affair. That could hurt as well. So they're the 4 conflicts. Me, you, me role, me environment. Okay, good example of a me you. Anything else that captures your attention, Jessica? A strength that either helps or hurts the team.
I guess looking at the high intensity on there, like seeing how similar me and John are in building rapport, I guess that would be a strength to working with John. Like if we're both very stuck on building that rapport, I feel like that's just gonna help progress and actually build a rapport, like a better rapport that's lasting in the future.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any strengths or weaknesses? Is there any other weaknesses that you see potentially in the team and how that could help or hinder performance?
I mean, I think it's just looking at the averages, I keep coming back to that, we're just pretty much in the middle of most out of the, 48, 48, 50, 50, 50, that's 5. So that we're kind of just in the middle on so many different things, like prioritizing, change resistance, which we're in a role that's always changing, like this, things are always changing. Work process alignment, accuracy. Those, it's concerning to me that we're just on the average scale, in a sense, because it's an industry where we need to be fine tuning that in a sense.
Let me give you an example. Have a look at self-reliance. The score's low, which means the team is less collaborative. How does that help or hinder the team performance?
It hinders because we're not working. But I don't understand that one. That's why I'm like, that's why I brought it to you earlier. How would I define that for Jess and John?
So
that's yellow. So low intensity for them, right? So low collaborative. So that means they're more self-reliant?
Correct.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, we're a team, but we don't collaborate. So it's more of a group of individuals.
Yeah.
Now, that could work. If everybody's responsible for their own paycheck and their own listings and their own sales, maybe that's fine. However, if there was something that we had to work together as a team on, maybe we just don't form that well as a team.
No, we have to. Like we're like people, and that's the big thing. Like cross-selling, all that stuff. It's about working together. But everyone's numbers are low.
But even John's doesn't make sense to you, like at all.
But in a sense, then if I get that, the self-reliant, you'd rather just do it yourself, you and John. You'd rather, instead of asking for help, you'd rather just do it yourself. That's how I read that, and from Daniel's new explanation. Because to me, when I just read it as self-reliance,
Yeah,
it was like, yeah. But in reality, then it's saying that you guys would rather do it yourself than depend on someone else. Right, Daniel?
So if we have a look here is that John you're looking at?
John and Jessica.
Okay. So we'll say here low intensity. Low intensity means an absence of this behavior in most situations.
They're not self-reliant? I'm not understanding.
And what I'll do is I will bring up his DISC report and we'll take a closer look as well. So you can keep discussing that. Just give me 30 seconds to get John's report up.
I think that's what I'm not understanding.
Yeah, and that's how I highlight it, because you two are ones that are, whereas look at who's high, who's in the middle there, Philip and Phil. They'll get someone else to do it. That makes sense to me. They'll get someone else to do it for them.
Okay, so here's John. See that? We can see it's a really high pure I style. And then the D style's less active. Let's have a look at some descriptive words here. So for John, when it comes to solving problems and tasks, more unobtrusive. When it comes to people and contact, then it's going to be emotional, enthusiastic. When it comes to the pace and the consistency of the environment, more cooperative. And then when it comes to the details, more analytical. And there are his natural descriptors here. So high I, low D, which will make those behaviors stand out even more. So more unobtrusive and
So
more.
where does this align to that though?
Sorry, just repeat that one for me.
Where is the self-reliance in that?
Yep, I'll show you here. So when we see here, behaviors, building rapport will be high. Change resistance will be reluctant to change. Expressing openness, social, prioritization, the rules, customer and team interaction, engaging. Accuracy, situational. Self-reliance, collaborative. So he'll work better amongst the team. More collaborative. Because that S style is higher. Can you see that one there? So you've got John. Self-reliance. Yep, let me bring that one up. Sorry, my screen's really big. I gotta find that button. Okay, there we go. So for John, that's all the way down the bottom of the list. Relying on others. Low
So
pro.
he's not, so he is collaborative.
Less collaborative.
He's less collaborative.
Less collaborative. More individualistic.
You just said opposite, didn't he? He said he works better in a group and it's more of a collaborative.
So when you have a look at it here, you got building rapport, change resistance, expressing openness, all high. And then down the bottom, reasoning, personal drive, self-reliance, lower. So they've got the low intensity scores there for John. So see that? That's low intensity. So you got low intensity.
The absence of self-reliance. So you're saying it's an absence of this behavior in most situations.
Absence of behavior.
Then an absence of self-reliance. So that means he's collaborative with the team.
So low is collaborative. So self-reliance, collaborative, absent. It's a lot of information to take on.
It's the wording is just what's the word? It's opposite. Yeah, it's you can't just read it as these. They've just worded it in silly ways. I just found word.
Okay.
Because it's not clear. Oh.
So how does that help or hinder the team?
I guess I'm still trying to
understand it.
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't make sense knowing him as well. And Des, because she's essentially the same.
Okay. We'll move on from that one because we've only got a few minutes left. The next one is, I want you to have a look at the highs and the lows, or the things that are opposite from the overall team highs and lows. And think, how might these individuals be regarded by the team or perceive the team's approach and effectiveness? So an example here would be, we could have a look at Jessica. Building rapport, relationship focused. So that's really high. So potentially, how might William view Jessica? Because his score is significantly lower. So Jessica, 84, relationship focused. William is lower in that category. So how could potentially William view you, Jessica?
I don't know, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it all. It's just not connecting.
So, Jessica, your score here, 84, which means you're really relationship focused.
Yeah.
William's score is 52. So we'll just say there's a 32-point gap here, which means being relationship focused is less important for him. So how could he potentially view somebody like yourself who's really relationship focused?
He view her.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Would it be more so how would they work together?
How could he perceive Jessica? So maybe, Jessica, you think about it for a moment. Eski, imagine you're John and you're less relationship focused. And you've got Jessica, who's extremely relationship focused. She really wants to build a relationship with you, but you're not interested. How could William perceive Jessica?
Like she's seeking. I don't know. Don't even know what this.
Okay. So let's have a look at John. For Jessica and John, relationships are really important. Extremely important. So if you two were working together, what could you expect?
To build a pretty good relationship, and like I said before, to develop and be better in the future.
Excellent. Now contrast that with John. You really want to build a relationship, but he doesn't. What potential stress or tension could that cause?
I guess in that sense, we'll, let's just say an example, if I was trying to build a rapport with a buyer, and we was just kind of trying to avoid that and just get the sale through, I guess you could see my behavior as a waste of time.
Perfect. Excellent. So these are potential conflicts that can happen. And it's because of our preferences. So what we would see here is, for example, Jessica, your priority here would be to build a relationship first. That'd be your priority. And then Philip and William would say, don't worry about the relationship, just get the deal. So you'd see the world differently. Not one is right and one's wrong. It's just different. Let's think about William and Philip here. We've got opposite ends of the scales here. William is highly sociable and very open. Then we've got Philip, who's less active. He scores 50 and he's less open, less social. What do you think the dynamic would be here in this relationship?
The balance. I mean, they're best of friends. So one is more dominant than the other. One is more outspoken than the other. And I think one is more swayed than the other. Like he's swayed by the other one a lot.
Beautiful. You could also have one talker and one listener. Okay. So you'll see these patterns in here. If we go all the way over to the left here, we've got William, when it comes to reasoning, intuition based. And Philip, more towards evidence based. So what will happen is Philip will be a little bit more rational in the decision making. William will be a little bit more what the gut feel is, with potentially not even considering the facts or the details. Can you see that there? Okay. Now, one that you can consider, let's have a look at the team score here. Expressing openness, 70. So the team's very social. Now, all the way down to the left-hand side, we can see reasoning again, more intuition-based. So that combination, expressing openness and intuition-based reasoning, what will happen here is that when an offer is presented, it'll be more about the individual selling themselves and converting because of who they are. And that will work for a certain portion of the population, but could potentially limit the other people who are very logical, who don't respond to emotion. Can you see that potential pattern there? Expressing openness, very social. We're going to build this relationship and I want you to buy or I want you to take the offer because it's based in intuition and I want you to like me. Versus...
It's only a couple rows where we're really different. You know what I mean? Most of them, it's only one or two people that are a different.
Which one are you referring to, Eski?
Like most of them, look at the first two, for example, we only have one or two people that are a different color, so to say, or a different rating.
Which row are you referring to?
Careful decision making and reasoning. Yeah?
Okay. Yep.
Even going down to expressing openness in customer team interaction, there's only one or two people that are out of there. It's really just towards the middle, I'd say, where we have 3 or 4 out of the 11 of us that are more out there. But otherwise, I think kind of even the self-reliance, it's 2 and 2, everyone else is the same. Right?
So that becomes the culture. So we have a culture here that's high in building rapport, a culture that's high with engaging customer and team interaction, a culture that's very social. And then what's in the culture as well, if we have a look at the lower scores, when it comes to decisions, we're impulsive. When it comes to reasoning, we reason on intuition. When it comes to self-reliance, we're low in collaborative. So that's the culture. And the team attracts a lot of that. And now that could be perfect for the business. It could be perfect for the area. Okay. One more thing. Are there any ground rules that the team should consider as a group in the future? Do you think there's any ground rules that need to be in place for the teams? Do your brains feel overloaded today?
There's just so much of this that I have questions. I think just knowing the person and trying to understand this is just, I see it for some things, but I don't see it for all of them. So, Frank is not an impulsive decision maker at all.
Yeah.
Low and impulsive.
Yeah, low, so he's not. So because he's got a low score, that would say that he's low in impulsive, careful decision making, or is he saying that he's an impulsive decision maker?
So he'll be a careful. Let's have a look at his report.
But why can't we just? So is he impulsive or he's careful? Because this is what I mean. It's very confusing.
Yep, I'll show you his whole report, and then you can see all the details. Okay, here we go. So what you've got here, high I and less active C. Okay, so high I is very intuitive. Low C is more intuitive. So based on the gut feel. But what you'll also see in Frank is his adapted style is different. So that's where you've got to be able to distinguish between his natural and his adapted behavior, because Frank will present himself in two very different ways.
As would Claudio, because they were the two. But those are the natural, because Claudio was so similar.
Correct. So naturally, Frank's going to be more impulsive. And then in his adapted style, that impulse will disappear. Can you see that high C style there? That high C style will come out and you'll see a different side of Frank. Have you seen that side of Frank before?
No.
So you're going to see Frank present himself two different ways. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does, but we're focusing on the natural style, which you say is what most people, unless they're in the 4. So that's why, again, that chart it's very difficult to make sense of it, because even when you look at our disc chart of the office, in his natural style, Frank is similar to us, to most of the team. Only John and Will and Jess were a little out there. So in saying that, that's why Claudio's numbers are very similar to the rest of the team. I'm still having trouble understanding how his decision making, is it careful or is it impulsive? Because you said it's the absence. It's the same as the self-reliance with Jess and John. You saying it's collaborative or they're more self-reliant?
Okay, so let's do it like this. Everybody has two styles. An adapted style and a natural style. So what we're looking at in here is we're just looking at their natural style.
Yes.
However, in the workplace, you may see somebody adapting for normally one of 4 reasons. Number 1 is they're adapting for success. Number 2, they adapt for survival. Number 3, they may have role confusion. Or number 4, it could be a mental health issue. However, that conversation is very, very complex.
Yeah.
So what we tend to do when we create these charts, we have a look at natural. And then when there's a confusion, then we have a look at the adapted style. Because some people think they have to operate from their adapted style in the workplace. So if we haven't had a look... Pardon?
And that's Claudio.
Yes, and that's where it's the complexity is in the mind, because you have seen Claudio in his natural high I style, and then you've seen him in his adapted high D style. And he presents two different ways. Is that fair to say?
It has nothing to do with what I see, because we spoke to him about this post our meeting with you, and that's where Jess is struggling with her decision. And he said himself, I'm always an adapted style of the office. That's he. So it's very difficult to base it on one or the other, I guess, because it's a different representation. I don't know Frank in his personal life,
So
you know.
what you'll see is that once there's moderate stress, tension, and fatigue, that's when the adapted style comes out. That's when you'll start to see it. However, people who experience moderate stress, tension, and fatigue could remain the same disc style. And that's where it becomes complicated. So there's two outliers here. One is Claudio's style, and then you've got Frank's as well. But that adapted style, which is going to make the third part more confusing, is that also changes over time. The natural style will remain the same, but the adapted style could change moment to moment, year to year. That's the most flexible. So it's tough to make a rule on the other one. Does that make sense?
It does, but my brain.
Yeah. Humans are number one. Humans are complex. You got to remember that. That's why we don't go down.
Will not hurt us. It's hurting us.
You asked the question, I've got to give you the complex answer. And that's the confusing part about humans. Number one, they're complex. They're very complex. And that's why we say ignorance is bliss. Number two, people are extremely different. So you can have a D style who present differently because of their inner motivators, but also their critical thinking. What's their focus? People, tasks, or systems? Okay, so I want you to let this settle in, and over the next week, I want you just to let it simmer and just have any corrections in your team and go through there. And I think the big one stands out for you, Jessica. It's really easy there. You can see that you've got a building rapport in red. So go through and have a look at, is there any me conflicts? Is there any potential me-you conflicts? Is there any potential me role or me environment conflicts? And based on that new content, do you make any adjustments to your team? And then the other thing is, the more you understand this, the better it's going to be for you to be able to lead your teams, because you'll be able to predict the behaviours as you start to work with them. How do you do that? You'll look at William. What do you already know, Eski? You know that there's going to be an expression of openness. It's going to be really high. You'll be able to predict that. You'll be able to predict other things here, like with John. John really wants to build rapport. With Frank, you can see here, really high score in engagement. Frank will want to have a lot of engagement. So now you can start to make predictions about people's behaviours. And so as you work together, you'll say, this is what I expect, this is what I anticipate, and it reduces the shock.
If that's his natural style at work.
Just focus on the natural style, Eski.
Yeah.
Just focus on that. Because if we go down the rabbit hole on the other one, at this level, it becomes too confusing. I just want you to focus just on that at this time. And you focus on having your baby without letting disc take you down the wrong direction. And then we figure out those other little ones as we go. Okay, ladies, number one takeaway for you, Eski. What did you take away from today other than some confusion?
The me, you role in the environment is probably the most standout.
The four conflicts. Jessica, your takeaway?
I have to agree with that. I think looking at it that way and that chart will make more sense to me over time, as opposed to just looking at the numbers right now and trying to figure out what's different.
Yep. I'll send you over a copy of this. Look through that. It's like, imagine laying it over the other person like an invisible wrap, but you can start to see them through that. Okay, I'll send you a copy. Okay, ladies, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you shortly. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My pleasure.